When I first walked into Mr. Thompson's English class, I had no idea my life was about to change. It was my senior year, and like most students, I was just trying to survive until graduation. But Mr. Thompson was different. He was young, passionate, and had this infectious enthusiasm for literature that drew everyone in. I'd never met a teacher who could make Shakespeare feel like a Netflix binge or poetry like a playlist of my favorite songs. The first time we really connected was after I stayed behind to ask about an essay. I was struggling with Hamlet, and he offered to give me some extra help. That afternoon, the classroom was bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, and as we discussed the intricacies of the play, I felt an undeniable spark. It wasn't just his knowledge, it was the way he listened to me, really listened, like my thoughts and opinions genuinely mattered. From that day on, I found myself looking forward to English class more than anything else. I'd linger after the bell, asking questions that I pretended were about homework, but were really just excuses to stay and talk to him. He started giving me books to read outside of class, novels and poetry that weren't on the curriculum but seemed handpicked just for me. Each book felt like a secret message, a way to communicate things we couldn't say out loud. It wasn't long before our interactions became more than academic. One rainy afternoon, while most students rushed home, I stayed behind, claiming I needed help with a poem. We ended up talking about everything but poetry, music, movies, dreams, fears. He told me about his college days, his travels, and his love for writing. I told him things I'd never told anyone else, not even my closest friends. There was something about the way he looked at me with such intensity and understanding that made me feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in my life. The moment everything changed came unexpectedly. It was after a school event, one of those interminable award ceremonies. I'd won a prize for a short story I'd written, and Mr. Thompson had been the one to encourage me to submit it. After the ceremony, while everyone was mingling in the crowded auditorium, he caught my eye and subtly nodded towards the exit. I slipped away, heart pounding, and found him waiting in the empty hallway. "Congratulations, Alex," he said, his voice low and warm. "I'm really proud of you." "Thank you," I replied, feeling a rush of emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you." He smiled, and for a moment, we just stood there, the air between us thick with unspoken words. Then, impulsively, I stepped closer and hugged him. It wasn't meant to be anything more than a thank you, but as his arms wrapped around me, the hug lingered. When I pulled back slightly, our faces were inches apart, and I could feel his breath on my skin. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stop. Then he leaned in and kissed me, softly, tentatively, as if testing the waters. It felt like electricity jolted through my body, and I kissed him back, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. When we finally broke apart, he looked at me with a mix of wonder and fear. This can't happen," he whispered, but his words lacked conviction. "I know," I said, but I didn't move away. "But I don't want it to stop." From that night on, everything changed. We both knew the risks, the consequences if anyone found out, but the connection between us was too strong to ignore. We became experts at stolen moments and secret glances. During school hours, we maintained a professional distance, but after the last bell rang, we'd find ways to be together. Sometimes it was just a brief touch as we passed in the hallway. Other times it was hours spent talking and kissing in the quiet corners of the school or the back seats of his car. Every day was a mix of exhilaration and anxiety. We lived for the moments we could be together, but the fear of discovery was always lurking in the background. I started lying to my friends and family, coming up with elaborate excuses for my absences and sudden mood swings. It was a double life, one that was thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. Despite the constant fear, those months were some of the happiest of my life. Mr. Thompson wasn't just a teacher or a lover. He became my confidant, my muse, my everything. The intensity of our relationship made every moment feel significant, every conversation a profound exchange. Yet deep down, I knew this couldn't last forever. The real world was waiting, and sooner or later we'd have to face it. But for now, we had each other, and that was enough. Our secret meetings were the lifeblood of our relationship. We found hidden corners in the school, places where no one ever went, like the old storage room behind the gym or the secluded bench in the far corner of the school grounds. The risk made every touch, every kiss, electric. There was a small, run-down cafe on the edge of town where we'd meet sometimes, hidden among the regular patrons who didn't know or care about our private world. Each rendezvous was like an escape from reality, a stolen fragment of paradise. Outside of these moments, we communicated through coded messages. In class, he'd leave notes in my assignments with lines from books we both loved, their meanings known only to us. I'd reply with my own literary references, a secret dialogue woven into the fabric of our everyday interactions. We even created an anonymous email account, where we could exchange longer, more personal messages without the fear of someone stumbling across our texts. Despite the passion, the secrecy took its toll. I was constantly on edge, juggling school, friends, and family while keeping our relationship hidden. My friends noticed my distracted behavior and the way I'd sometimes disappear without explanation. I told them I was overwhelmed with college applications and extracurricular activities, a half-truth that only barely masked the real reason for my erratic behavior. The emotional roller coaster of our relationship was exhausting. There were moments of intense joy and connection, like when we'd discuss our dreams for the future or share our deepest fears. But there were also moments of crushing anxiety and doubt. Every time the school principal walked into our classroom unexpectedly, or a student glanced at us a second too long, my heart would race with the fear of discovery. One afternoon, as we sat in his car parked in a deserted lot, Mr. Thompson voiced the fears that had been gnawing at both of us. "Alex, we need to talk about what we're doing," he said, his voice heavy with concern. This isn't sustainable. Someone's going to find out, and when they do, it'll be disastrous for both of us." I knew he was right, but the thought of ending things was unbearable. "I know it's risky, but I can't imagine my life without you," I replied, my voice trembling. "We've been so careful. We just have to keep being careful." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I care about you more than anything, but this secrecy, the constant fear, it's eating me alive, and it's not fair to you. You should be enjoying your senior year, not hiding in the shadows." The reality of our situation was like a dark cloud hanging over us, but the alternative, losing him, was even darker. We decided to be even more cautious, limiting our meetings and making sure there were no slip-ups. But the strain was palpable. Then came the close calls. A classmate, Jenna, who'd always been a bit too curious for her own good, started asking questions. She'd noticed how I seemed to light up whenever Mr. Thompson was around, and she wasn't shy about her suspicions. "Alex, are you sure there's nothing going on with you and Mr. Thompson?" she asked one day during lunch, her eyes narrowed with curiosity. "Of course not," I lied, my heart pounding. "He's just a really great teacher who's helped me a lot with my writing. You know how much I care about that." Jenna didn't seem entirely convinced, but she let it drop. For now. It was a stark reminder of how easily our secret could unravel. The constant vigilance was wearing me down, and it started to show in my schoolwork. My grades, which had always been high, began to slip. Teachers noticed, my friends noticed, and worst of all, my parents noticed. One evening, my mom confronted me. "Alex, what's going on with you? You've been so distant and your grades are suffering. Is there something you're not telling us?" I wanted to tell her everything, to unload the burden of my secret, but I knew I couldn't. "I'm just stressed about college," I said, forcing a smile. "It's a lot to handle, but I'll be fine." She looked at me with a mix of concern and skepticism, but didn't push further. The weight of the lies was becoming unbearable, but the thought of losing Mr. Thompson kept me going. Despite the turmoil, there were moments of pure, unfiltered joy that made it all worth it. Like the night we drove out to the countryside, far away from prying eyes, and lay under the stars, talking about everything and nothing. It was in those moments that the world fell away, and it was just us, together and free. But deep down, we both knew that our double life couldn't last forever. Each day brought us closer to the inevitable moment when everything would come crashing down. The only question was how long we could keep the illusion alive and what would happen when reality finally caught up with us.